My name is Sergio Loza. I'm an assistant professor in the Department of Romance Languages, where I also direct the Spanish Heritage Language Program. So code switching, as I see it here within the context of the US, is where bilinguals, Latinx people, draw from their diverse linguistic resources to communicate amongst each other in a socio-culturally appropriate way. Growing up in in Westside Phoenix, that's where all the, it's still till this day, it's a very large recent immigrant population, Mexican American population. I grew up in that neighborhood where it's like 95% Mexican American and obviously very much Spanish speaking. Kids of immigrants that only spoke Spanish transitioning us to English so that we would build abilities both in English and Spanish. And so we would be taught in Spanish most of the time, but they would teach us English. And then when that law passed, it became illegal for teachers to speak to us in Spanish in the classroom. And many of us were put into English-only classrooms wherein the instruction was completely in English, and the goal was to get us to become English proficient, right? And so, it was very hard. I went from enjoying school and loving school to absolutely hating it. Always, when I recall that time, I remember just feelings of inadequacy. I felt deficient, and yeah, school became a not so safe space for me. And English only law was one thing, but then it was sort of followed by very harsh, very inhumane. I don't even have a word to describe them, but these very specific laws meant to target the Mexican community, the Mexican immigrant community in the state of Arizona. I was barely a freshman in college when SB 1070, when it was approved, and SB 1070, basically in a nutshell, authorized police officers, like local police officers, to also act as like ICE, as immigration officers. So they could if they saw that you looked a certain way, right? If you fit a certain stereotype, they could ask you to show them your papers, right? That's what made Mexican people and other all the other Latino groups as well. It made us feel targeted, and it made us feel othered. It made us feel like people were watching us. It made us feel incredibly uncomfortable by the police, especially by the sheriff's department. Right? He would go to the grocery stores. He would go to all the very Mexican areas, shops and shopping malls and things like that, restaurants, and they would literally call them roundups, and they would round up all of these undocumented people and deport them. If we think about the metaphor, it's an animal, like if we were like cattle, animals. I just remember feeling like I didn't, but you always feel like you don't belong, but I just remember feeling like none of this was for me, meant for me, or I wasn't wanted anywhere. It was an extreme feeling. It was a very heightened feeling of alienation, and of not being wanted by your own country. It was like that. It was very intense. It was hard living in a neighborhood like that because you felt like like everyone hated you, like everyone hated your community. You can't feel comfortably American like that. That's just, that idea doesn't really sit right with you. And my relationship with Spanish, I'm so glad that it's totally different now. Ironically, I was an undergrad looking for a language course to take because it was part of the requirements for my undergraduate degree. And I spoke to a advisor, and he basically said, "Oh, you're Mexican. oh, you should take Spanish. It'll be an easy A for you. You'll, brush up on your Spanish a little bit. But if anything, you can get this requirement out of the way. And it was actually a heritage course, and I didn't even know it was a heritage course. And so I was in this Spanish class, and it was all Latinx people that looked like me, and that was a shock because I felt very lonely on campus. I felt like I didn't have any friends. I didn't have any sense of community, my freshman year. So I took that class. I've absolutely loved it, the community aspect of it, and also the discussions we had, and the friends I made. And so I kept taking more classes and more classes, and I ended up adding a Spanish major as well. So I double majored. The way I speak Spanish as a U.S. Latino person is not wrong, right? That it's a reflection and it's shaped by my social reality. I'm a U.S. Latino myself, and I've always code switched. And so I code switched before I knew that it was called code switching. And I more formally learned of what it is and what are the different linguistic phenomenon associated with code switching as an undergrad when I took my first sociolinguistics course. And it was in that course that it really opened my eyes to how linguistically sophisticated U.S. Latinx people are in their way of using languages and moving between English and Spanish. And, I gained an appreciation for it and a critical awareness of it. I took my first SHL course, pedagogy course, and I started learning about the injustices that we see in education, the way that Spanish classes aren't always a safe space for Latinx people in the U.S. And I remember saying that, yeah, I see that too, right? It happened to me in a different way, but yeah, I also see the way that Spanish classes reinforce these dominant views of the way U.S. Latinx people speak, right? And then I saw a real opportunity to do something about it, applying my knowledge to this very practical area that means a lot to me on a personal level. And so then I started digging more into the sociopolitics of language. So why is it that even though all language varieties, all dialects are sociolinguistically equal and they're all valid, why is it that they're still treated differently in society? Why is it that education finds systemic ways to discriminate certain people, right, and privilege others? Why is it that we're still teaching certain language varieties in the classroom that have no relevance to the way U.S. Latinx people speak Spanish? Code switching is a sophisticated language ability that, unless you grew up doing it and you grew up with a specific social experience, you won't be able to do it, right? You'll be able to study it, but you won't be able to reproduce it. And it's a valid ability.